Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Marriage is Tougher Than Woodpecker Lips podcast. This is Brian.
And I'm Paul. We'd like to welcome you to a community meant for the men of the world to share our thoughts and perspectives on marriage.
We can learn from each other's experiences and help each other be better husbands. Now, let's get right into the show.
Hey, welcome back. If you've been listening to us, welcome. If you're a first-time viewer, we appreciate you taking the time. Today, we're just going to talk about layers of trust, what trust looks like in guarding our marriage when we talk to others about it, right? Not just trust in our marriage, trusting our spouse, but trusting accountability and just getting an outside view and who you can talk to and what about.
And we also want to invite you to link up with us on our social medias, searching Marriage is Tougher. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all those places. We want you to feel free to continue our conversation on any of those platforms, but more or less reach out to us. If you'd like to be a guest, you can find us on marriagestougher.com. There's a short form for you to fill out there. And then you can also find all of our episodes archived there as well. So feel free to browse, get some topic ideas, share them with us, or request to be a guest, and then we'll roll with you from there. All right, let's get into this episode.
Man, so layers of trust. This is a random thought process from another episode.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about this concept and, trusting an outside source with what's going on in your marriage it's a thing, right? It should be thoughtful and thought about, but not to the point that you don't talk to anyone. But It's more so, who do you talk to and why? And why is it good and why is it not good to divulge different information to different types of people in your life? So, I mean, when you think of layers of trust and either speaking to, about, or getting feedback, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, so because of where we are currently with our marriage, the first thing that actually pops in my mind is being willing to seek couples therapy, right? And I guess the part of the layers of trust I'd want to discuss with that is you have to find the right therapist that, especially if you're in couples therapy, the right therapist that fits both parties, right? You and your wife, because I guess some therapists could have a tendency to lean one way or the other as far as their perspective is concerned. If they're not completely objective to what's going on, you can end up in a space that's not necessarily as healthy as you would like it to be, right? My wife and I have found that person. I find that if we do bring issues to our therapist, she has a tendency to ask us both how we feel about the situation. She allows us to say anything that we need to say. And then when she responds to both of us, right? And then gives us both tools to work on or improve upon, the foundation that we already have built. So I think there's a lot more to it, right? We have a bunch of bullet points we can hit or we're going to hit, but just off the top of my head, that's where I wanted to start, simply because that's where I'm at right now.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks for, sharing that in general. Yeah, I feel like it's almost initially you're like, whoa. Like for me, it's like, whoa, but I mean, I guard marriage, or we guard marriages as such a high space.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's also, if you want a successful marriage, part of a quote unquote successful marriage is being an example, right?
Mhm.
So you still want to share experiences with everyone, but
Right.
it's how do you share those experiences and which ones to share? Um, so when I think of trust, I think of you can have a couple different outlooks on the world, right? You can be someone that trusts the good in people until they show you otherwise. You can be one to just always trust the good in people, like no matter what. Or the opposite, you can trust that everyone's shady until they show you otherwise, or just be like, nah, everyone's trash. I'm just gonna,
Mm.
look at the world like that. And that general outlook really is like the foundation of how you can decide what to share with who, um, as far as your relationship goes. And just to give you all kind of where I'm thinking is we're in different spaces with different people all throughout our day, right? With our family, with our friends, with our coworkers. Um, we are with our wives, right? We're with other, couples that we really like, or with other couples that we might not like so much.
Mm.
All these things. We're with our parents. So it's there's a trust layer. Each kind of set of people, there's a layer of trust on how much you can or cannot share, right? And each group is kind of dynamic, right? Even if you're thinking like your coworkers, you may have, just like people that you just say hi to when you walk in the building. You have people on your immediate team, and then you may have someone you consider a friend or even a best friend that you work with. So
Mhm.
all those dynamics, there's different levels of things you can share about your marriage, um, with those three levels of people, and that's just coworkers, right? So it can get a
Sure.
little crazy or convoluted, but that's kind of what my brain was thinking about, when this topic came to mind.
Yeah, for sure. And just thinking from personal experience, I think it has a lot to do with us having a marriage podcast, right? But I'm often talking about marriage with a lot of different people, um, mostly from the place of I want to get their perspectives. Now, I'm fortunate where I work to have a lot of older people who've been married for a long time. And it seems to me when you ask those type of people about marriage, they're more than willing to open up and share just because they've got the experience, they know what they're talking about, but also they're just speaking from what they've encountered, right? Um, and they've always got a story on deck or some advice,
Right.
right?
Feels that way.
Um, Now, with the layers of trust, like you said, I might not and don't, for the most part, go real deep into like what it is that we're necessarily going through. Um, I probably go a little deeper than the average person might, just because I'm so used to now sharing it with the world, right? Because
Hmm.
or I just put my stuff out there for the most part, um, through the podcast. But I find myself always trying to learn and always trying to be better. And I will try to pull that information from wherever I could possibly find it. You know what I mean? So while there is that layer stack of trust, right, that we were talking about, I find myself giving that surface trust to a lot of people earlier in a relationship than a typical person would.
No, and that's a good point. I mean, when you are talking about marriage, or marriage is, a focus on our mind, it's easier to want to share, and it's easier to want to grow. Just like whatever your focus is, that's what you talk about. Um, it's kind of it's good to know your filters of what you can and cannot say. And I say
Mhm.
it even can go to, having a conversation with your wife on either certain topics or what things are like a no-go to share with certain people. Um, if if that's something you think you should do, but a lot of it is just organic conversation, so things you can't even think might even pop up. But I would say generally trust your inner self. Like you'll know when you how far you should go, um, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And the interesting thing about it is, like I said, I work with people who are, you know, at least 15 years my senior in age, and some 15 plus years my senior in time being married, right? It is interesting to me to have them approach me and ask me for advice. It's actually like I enjoy it because it sparks thoughts for, you know, things that I may encounter within my marriage. I mean, there's potential that I have already encountered these things, but it's funny how when you start these types of conversations, how people start to open up if they're willing or needing help in that area.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
it's even the trust that they have in you,
right?
right? To know that, hey, this is something that he wants to talk about, is knowledgeable about, and, you know, can give quality feedback.
Yeah. So I guess I say that to say that's one of those filter gauges, I guess you can use, right? Are they willing to open up about their stuff as well if you're going to talk to somebody? Because typically, um, if that's the case, then they're probably pretty prepared to keep that topic guarded, or you can just ask, like, how much are you willing to share? How much are you willing to listen to? You know what I mean?
Right. No, that's that's a good example and a good idea. Excuse me. Is just mutual trust, building mutual trust. So I think that'd be for sure one of those layers. Like, is there mutual trust with this person to go a little bit deeper than the surface or average? And then as you keep building trust with that person or said people, it's like, is the trust deeper and deeper? And I think that's kind of where the layers of trust is,
Hmm.
right? Like what level of vulnerability do we have with each other?
Right.
Because vulnerability breeds trust, right? Because it's like if I can, because you don't know if you can fully show up in different spaces, right? Without being either, well, the fear is, which what makes it vulnerable is the fear is being rejected, outcast, othered, right? So that's why we are not vulnerable also, and safety for our loved ones, right? Like, I'm not trying to put anybody's business in the street that such and
Yeah.
such will find, or everyone will find out, or whatever. um but that is, now that we're walking through this, like it's how vulnerable can you be with each layer, right? Is another layer of vulnerability, which builds more trust, which allows you to be more vulnerable, which allows you to have more trust. Right.
And it goes both ways, right? Like,
Hmm.
we're talking mostly about what can we share, but once you build that type of relationship with someone, you start being able to pick apart, well, how much can I say about their situation, right? How much input do they want? How far do they want me to reach into what I'm witnessing, right? I have all this experience in, we'll just fictitiously say I have all this experience in helping people with their marriages, right? So I've seen a lot. I can provide a lot of value here. I could even help you, direct your marriage in a certain area. But not every person you talk to is going to want that level of help. Not everyone you
Hmm.
talk to is going to offer that layer of, mutual trust. And so you just have to be mindful, um, and maybe even just have those conversations about how far do you want this to go.
Yeah, I mean, you can always preface that when you start talking about marriage topics or something that, you know, their wife did or your wife did or whatever, or trying to build a commonality, right? Like if someone brings something like, like, yeah, I went through that too or whatever, or I know someone who went through that and this and that. So it's, yeah, that level of, do you even want to hear this?
Right.
Because I'm always ready to share, but
Yeah.
you know,
And I'm also not
so
trying to stick to a wall.
right. And I think obviously not going in when you're talking about just your marriage, not assuming that one, like we said, everyone wants to hear about it, right? And just using that filter is very important, and knowing, being able to identify who to talk to. Obviously, if it's like surface level, we're in a group setting and it's like a general marriage thing, you know, be surface level that everyone in the group can handle when responding, right? But
Mm.
if it's more one on one with someone that you trust, or you have, there's proven levels of vulnerability, then you can be more vulnerable.
Yeah. Now there's a different path we could have taken for this topic, right? And just if we were to speak to layers of trust within our marriage specifically, right? We talked a lot about support from outside the marriage, or being able to, have those conversations from outside the marriage. But I think it's probably pertinent to talk about how we can build those layers of trust within our marriage. Just because I would feel and would be prepared to say that if you don't build those layers of trust, you might not have a long marriage to go and talk about outside of your marriage.
Fair point.
So you being a marriage coach and counselor, what are a couple things that you would advise husbands out there do to start building or maybe even regaining some of those uh, layers of trust within their marriage?
I think from my experience, trust is being able to, in essence, it's being able to predict how someone will react in a certain space.
Mm.
And that sounds a little weird, but if you think about it, right, using a computer, for example, your laptop, right, when you hit the power button, you trust that it'll come on. When you type the keys, you expect it to type with those letters, right? But you've only had that experience because every time you turn it on, you hit that same power button. Every time you hit the letter A, it does A. Every time you hit return, it does something, right? So it's not in a space of manipulation, is what I'm saying. It's
Hmm.
in a space of, I've been with this person so long, or my wife understands me and I've been consistent. This is all say to be consistent in who you are, right? So do what you say you're going to do, um, and consistently show that you're going to be whoever you are with intentionality, right? Because you're going to consistently be who you're going to be regardless. So to build a level of trust is be who you want to be consistently. So continue to strive to be the best version of yourself. And that's how you build trust. So that's communicating in a healthy way that makes her feel safe and seen. That is um, that is supporting her in whatever her endeavors are, that is taking responsibility for when you don't follow through or you may, misstep. Um, that is being open to feedback without being defensive,
Mm.
right? So that's probably four things right there that could build your consistency in your marriage. And then that, in essence, that builds your trustworthiness.
Yeah, that's good, man. I wanted to, as we're wrapping up here, just stick on the one point where, if you find yourself trying to improve in a certain area, you may find it difficult to stay as consistent as you would like, right? Because we are maybe learning new techniques or tactics in how to be the person or man that we're looking to be. Um, but don't be afraid to ask for help in accountability from your wife. I know this is something that has helped me. And like Paul said, being open to feedback without getting defensive or guarded or, closing yourself back in if that was an issue for you, like it was for me, um, can help you advance in that area a lot faster and help you be much more consistent, right? Because like we said, like those t-shirts that Concise the Barber is creating, like impact over influence, right? Allow your wife to be impactful um, in the way that you see fit to help guide you to the area where you have collectively decided, this is where we want our marriage to be. Below that, this is who we need to be in order to make our marriage what we want it to be. And again, do that for each other, right? Don't be afraid to share how your wife's actions are also impacting your marriage, and give her guidance to let her know, hey, this is what I would like from you, right? How can we get this here? And then ask for her to do the same for you.
That's good. Open lines of communication with trust that each person in the relationship wants the best for the other and has the best interest at heart. That's it.
That's it. All right. Well, I want to take another opportunity to invite you guys to link up with us on our social medias, searching Marriage is Tougher through Instagram, Facebook, marriageistuffer.com. You can also find us on YouTube if you'd like to see our wonderful faces and see us react to each other while we say funny things, interesting things, or things that just blow our minds. But we also would like to invite you to continue the conversation for any of our episodes, any of our topics on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you feel most comfortable, really just wherever you are. We promise we will respond to the questions you pose, to the topics you want to continue. So make sure you're doing that, so you are part of this community that we are building, and also invite others in to the community. If there's someone that you find that might need some help in the area or really could just add a lot of value, please tell them to come over and begin to do that, because we want all the husbands who want to be better to be in this space. And we hope that we are providing that for you. If you have some tips on how we could do that better, share that with us as well.
Peace.